It's October 10, 2019, and this is Globespan 24x7 News. Good evening and thanks for joining us. My name is Samuel Suknandan, coming to you live from Georgetown, Guyana. Here are the major headlines for today. Opposition leader apologizes for explicits used in leaked private conversation. 19-year-old man wanted for murder of Golden Grove man. Government possibly eyeing return to parliament to pass budget, says opposition chief whip. East Coast Demerara laborer remanded for stabbing wife to death, and Georgetown Hospital urges all Guyanese to screen for silent eye diseases. Over to you, Kingsley.
Thank you, Samuel. Here's a look at what's happening in the region and around the world. The IMF urges Guyana's government to make asset declaration to the Integrity Commission. Also, Trinidadian authorities investigating biggest case of false imprisonment. We'll also tell you that 11 people were arrested in Mexico after a mayor was dragged through the streets. And Canada's foreign minister condemns Turkey's incursion in Syria. We'll now take a look at Abel Harris, who is at the sports desk.
Thanks, Kingsley. Now here to take a look at what's happening in sports. CONCACAF Nations League GFF named 22-man squad. Teams named for Women's T10 tourney ahead of CPL final matches. And Osaka to fly Japan's flag high at 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Back to you, Samuel.
Thanks, Abel. And now for a look at the news. Two brothers were today shot dead while fishing off the Wanini coast around the Shell Beach area on Wednesday afternoon, police say. Dead are Ian and Rakesh, who lived at Father's Beach. Commander Wendell Blanham disclosed to the media that the ranks are on the scene conducting investigations. According to him, residents heard gunshots in the area. Fearing for the safety of the men, they ventured to the beach, but they were nowhere to be found. The police were informed, and after intense search efforts, the bodies of the men were discovered sporting gunshot wounds, along with chops about the body. Investigations are ongoing. Meanwhile, Guyanese and persons eligible to vote in the upcoming regional and general elections on March 2, 2020 are being urged to review the Ghana Elections Commission's GCOM preliminary list of electors, PLE. Citizens are reminded to check the new voters list to ensure their names are on it. GCOM's claims and objections exercise, which began on October 1, will end on November 18, 2019. GCOM, the entity responsible for the administration and conduct of elections in Guyana, is urging citizens and persons eligible to vote to check for their names on the new voters list, and if there is any need for changes or correction to particulars and transfers in relation to addresses, this is the time for such verification. According to GCOM, and I quote, "You are eligible to vote in the regional and general elections in March 2020 only, if your name is on the preliminary list of electors," end quote. Further, the Commission, in accordance with the Constitution of Ghana, stated that an eligible voter must be on the preliminary list of electors. You must be 18 years or older, or will become 18 by December 31, 2019, a Guyanese citizen by birth, descent, naturalization, or registration, or a citizen of a Commonwealth country living in Ghana for no less than 1 year preceding December 31, 2019. GCOM's claims and objection exercise is being conducted at all GCOM offices throughout the country. More information can be accessed from the Commission's website.
No, tell me friend, buddy.
Yes, but tell him that you just getting your bad book here. He just cussing every.
That was a viral audio recording of opposition leader Dr. Bara Jagdeo venting his frustration over the appearance of West Indies star batsman Chris Gayle at the PNC's anniversary observances at the weekend. Following its circulation on several social media platforms, the opposition leader came in for great condemnation and rebuke, with many expressing that the conduct is unbecoming for someone who holds such high office in the land. However, Dr. Jagdeo, at his weekly press briefing earlier today, said he was truly remorseful that the Guyanese populace had to be subject to a temporary lapse in his behavior.
The tape proves that, and let me say to people, I do get angry And let me say to them again, when I get angry, sometimes I use expletives. And I am sorry that people had to be exposed to that, because APNU illegally recorded this, and they circulated it. It was done in a private setting. But I believe, so I'm really sorry that the public had to hear what took place in a private setting.
Jagdeo Forda went on to explain that his reaction was in response to being lied to, and unlike divine beings, untruths tend to bear on persons differently, and his reaction was only human.
They should be ashamed of doing that, misleading a sporting personality into going into such an environment that where they knew it will damage his standing among his fans. And the fans cut across Guyana, they cut across politics, race, etc. Chris Gayle had tons of fans in Guyana. And so they should be ashamed of that. But they chose to do this, but in a way to make that public, thinking that somehow it will damage me.
The opposition leader Ford explained that as much as this conversation was held in private, it should never be understood that he entertains certain conversations, especially those of racism. He said his anger stemmed from the fact that Chris Gayle, as a sportsman, would never endorse a political party in Guyana, and the shame falls on the administration for their blatant trickery of the cricketer.
And you said, sir, that you're now placing those persons. Right. You're now placing those persons in your black book. What does it mean to be in the Jagdeo Black Book?
Jagdeo Black Book. It means that any privilege that you have, like when some of these individuals, I know them. And so they call me from time to time, have a talk to me, etc. That means that privilege is gone.
Because they took Chris Gayle to live there.
The privilege is gone,
because they took Chris Gayle to live there.
Because they misled him. They misled him and then sought to lie to me. They sought to lie to me that they didn't want no part of it. That's why. They not only misled him, which could have damaged his reputation, but then sought to lie to me that they did it. All right.
I'm asking the question because I'm trying to gather my, this
you came here for that. I think
yeah, but you dealt with it too. But I'm trying to understand the leader of the opposition, the longest serving president that this country has seen, concerning himself with two friends who took Chris Gayle to a town to meet with people. Why does it concern you so much?
You've already shifted it back to concerning myself.
Because you put the persons in your black book.
No, these
you said it, they're now in your black book, so why are they there now?
Yes. Anyhow, mostly the thing is that I'm human. I'm human.
So
I am.
Chris Gayle has since released a statement saying that he is completely apolitical and was indeed tricked into attending the event in Linden under the guise of interaction with his fan base there. Meanwhile, there has been much controversy surrounding the life of the 11th Parliament and the reasons why it has not yet been dissolved. The government has repeatedly signaled its intention to return to the National Assembly, so much so that several ministers of the government and the president himself have urged the opposition to reconsider their position. However, the main political opposition, the PPPC, is adamant that they will not return to Parliament since it is not necessary, as they will not be blackmailed into extending the life of the APNU-AFC government. The opposition's chief whip in the National Assembly, Gail Teixeira, in an exclusive telephone interview with Globespan 24x7 News, indicated that unless the necessary processes are followed, a return to Parliament by the government could be nothing more than mere speculation.
As of today, the government has not indicated whatsoever to the Parliament, the National Assembly, that they wish to convene a date of Parliament. By the standing orders, they have to give at least 6 days' notice. So as of today, there is no indication that Parliament is being convened whatsoever.
Teixeira reiterated the party's position that there is no need for a return to the National Assembly and stressed that this fact is also known by the government side of the House.
We have Mr. Granger's own speech on September 26, when he named the date that he did not need to go back to Parliament. He knows he does not need to go back to Parliament.
In the president's address to the nation on September 25, 2019, he was quoted as saying, "The government of Ghana must, as a consequence, return to the National Assembly to request an extension. The National Assembly reconvenes on 10 October 2019, end quote. As such, there were speculations that given the timeline of events following the passage of the no confidence motion, the government's return to Parliament was on the basis of legitimizing their status by seeking an extension on the Article 106(7) of the Constitution. However, Teixeira suggested that although the return may not happen soon, there may be other reasons for the government to return to the House.
The only reason they may want to go back to Parliament, and I don't think it will be now, will probably be for when they want to bring a budget in November, December.
But the opposition chief whip stated outrightly that even if that is the case, a return to Parliament still wouldn't be necessary.
And that they don't need to do either, because under the Constitution and under the financial rules, 2020, they can take 1/13 per month of what was in the 2019 budget and allocate it until elections. So there's no need for them to go back to Parliament. But they may go back.
Teixeira concluded that she has no doubt the government side will attempt to go back nonetheless, and the opposition will not be returning to the National Assembly even in the eventuality a budget is proposed, as there is no need for a budget before the elections. On the other hand, it was expressed by the Attorney General, Basil Williams, that should the opposition not return to Parliament, it may create a constitutional crisis and other measures will be needed.
Once he does that, obviously it would create a situation of conflict, I would say, a crisis situation which would impel the doctrine of necessity. And of course, all these things were put before the CCJ, and it would be left to the president, who has the remit both to name a date by proclamation and to dissolve Parliament by proclamation.
Meanwhile, Clerk of the National Assembly Sherlock Isaacs has since relayed that there is no indication from either side when will be the next sitting, although the National Assembly comes out of recess today, October 10. Guyana will soon benefit from $1 billion or 4.5 million euros under the Spotlight Initiative, a joint European Union and United Nations partnership to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls worldwide. The program will be implemented over the next 3 years in communities across regions 4 and 5, the coastland, and regions 1 and 7, the hinterland. The initiative aims at ending all forms of violence against women and girls, targeting those that are most prevalent and contribute to gender inequality across the world. The program will contribute to the elimination of sexual and gender-based violence through the creation of a broad partnership with civil society, government, private sector, media, among others, and build a social movement of women, men, girls, and boys as champions and as agents of change at the national, subnational, and community levels. We have witnessed an unprecedented number of abuse cases against women in Guyana. Domestic violence remains high in this country, particularly in rural areas, with several deaths being recorded each year. Joining me this evening to offer their comments on this initiative and how Guyana can capitalize on this funding to reach the root of the societal issue with the aim of addressing the same is Mr. Suresh Sugrim from the Humanitarian Mission Ghana Inc. His organization is focused on breaking the cycle of poverty through the development of individuals' mindset by providing education, empowerment, and life skills to families and communities. He has done quite a lot of work, especially in Region 6. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Singh.
A pleasure. Good afternoon, Samuel, and I want to thank you for having me on board with you here this evening.
You're welcome. I want to start off by asking you, what are your general thoughts about this project? Do you think it will help to address the issues of domestic violence, given its high prevalence in Guyana?
I think it is something that really needs to be addressed at the national level. Currently, what has been happening in Region 6 and across Guyana, as we all have read in the newspaper, that there is $1 billion is allocated for domestic violence and girls or whatever the situation may have been. In the newspaper, it says Region 4 and Region 5, which is the coastland, and Region 1 and Region 7, which is in the hinterland. My question, what happens to Region 6, which is the basket of many of the social ills? Also in that newspaper, it mentioned that the government and civil society will be taking care of that $1 billion project. So the question is, what happened to Region 6?
Yeah. Okay. And do you see this could get to the root causes of the issues and possibly lessen the incidence of domestic violence? I take your point that Region 6 is faced with most of these issues, but do you think that it could address the root causes of domestic violence in this country?
Yes, it can, providing that the money being spent the way it's supposed to be spent and what had happened in the past. There is a lot of donating agencies that have allocated money, and what had happened, most of the money goes for the overhead expenses of consultations of CEOs and project managers. And when you come to the grassroots of individuals, everything remained the same. So if we're talking about $1 million, it is only fair that we should look at the victims and how are we going to spend this money to erase and to get rid of the root cause of domestic violence and many other social ills that has been plaguing us at the national level.
What would be your recommendations for the use of these money? Because I know many times persons say we get international funding, but we have a lot of talk shops instead of getting the actual work done.
Well, I've been involved in Guyana since 2005 to the present time, and there is indeed several talk shops. And out of these talk shops, it is not the answer in addressing many of these issues. What had happened in the past, we had walks, we had rallies, we had awareness, and of course of all, we had talk shops. What come out of the talk shops is absolutely nothing. Because if something would be effective to come out of all of this money being spending, then we would have started to see some kind of a change that is effective in society. But with all of this fundings and money being coming into the country, we still have the epidemic that is well and alive.
All right, and finally, I want to ask you, what based on your work in helping women across the country, particularly in Region 6 in domestic violence, do you think that we are close to helping these communities to address the issue of domestic violence, especially with the police and everyone on board, the work being done by the government, the central government over the past years?
My honest answer to that question is no. We doesn't have what it takes in ground to address the issues of domestic violence or suicide, so to speak. We don't have the resources. We do not have the manpower. We do not have the police that is involved. We do not have the vehicle. We do not have the mechanism. We do not have a state-owned shelter for battered women with an armed guard 24/7. And you and I know some of these men in Guyana. They were chopped from rope to iron to wood to human being to come and to get to the victims. So no, we are not ready. We need the government and the politicians, we need to hold them accountable to do more for the people in the region and the people in the country, because I don't think we have done enough. A lot of women are scared. They're scared to go and give testimony. And I strongly think politicians need to change the law, because it should be the state versus the perpetrator. A lot of these women are uneducated, no job, no family, no money, and they go in and give testimony. When they come out, then they have to deal with the perpetrator. We're talking about death. Who is there to protect these women? You look in North America and many other countries, the law is there for the women. A woman got a protection order in Guyana, she can't even get 911. She can't even call the police. For example, the police station have one line in this age and time. If that line is busy, what is happening to that woman elsewhere?
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for that very interesting discussion. And I hope you can join us at another time for another discussion. Thanks.
I'll be more than happy, sir, because it's an epidemic that really needs to be addressed, and we need to hold our politicians and we need to hold our government accountable to invest more into the region and other areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest news in Ghana, the Caribbean, and around the world. Join us after these messages for more news with Shakima Day.
Globespan GT is a proud sponsor of Globespan 24x7 News. Here are some exciting news from Globespan GT. Fares have dropped for next year, starting January 20 to August. American Airlines has cheap fares on non-stop flights to New York. Flights are as low as $306 one way and $540 round trip, all tax included. Take advantage of these cheap fares on American Airlines non-stop flights to New York. Globespan has also cheap fares to Miami, Toronto, Canada, and the Caribbean. Call Globespan GT in Georgetown at 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in Rose Hall, call 337-4298, and New Amsterdam at 333-6230. That call Globespan GT in Georgetown at 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in Rose Hall, call 337-4287, and in New Amsterdam at 333-6230.
Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. Now for more news. You'll hear that police are seeking information regarding the whereabouts of 19-year-old Lennox Roberts, of African descent, for questioning in relation to the murder committed on David Gentle of Golden Grove. His last known address is currently unknown. Gentle, a neighborhood Democratic Council employee, was discovered dead with his neck almost severed on October 2, 2019, at a bridge in Haslington, East Coast, Demerara. It was reported that Gentle was at a bar imbibing the night before when he reportedly got into a confrontation with another patron. He was said to have left the location at around 1:30 hours. That was the last time he was seen alive. On October 2 at around 5:30 a.m., a woman who was heading to work discovered the mutilated body of Gentle. Anyone with information that may lead to the arrest of Lennox Roberts is asked to contact the police on telephone numbers 229-2750 or 226-6978, 225-8196, 911, or the nearest police station. All information will be treated with the strictest confidence. Meanwhile, the coalition government on Wednesday at the 13th NTC conference distributed some 34 million in presidential grants to Tushau's for the Green Development Sustainable Community Project. However, this act was criticized by former Amerindian Affairs Minister and opposition MP Pauline Sukai. You will have more in this report.
The checks were presented to 25 village leaders by Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs Sidney Alicock and Minister within the Ministry Valerie Garrido Lowe. However, opposition MP and former Minister of Amerindian Affairs Pauline Sukai expressed her dissatisfaction at the timing of the presentation. Sukai, speaking with Globespan 24x7, stressed that the grants were approved since last year and questioned why they were only given now.
They adopted that grant program. They have not increased it over the last 5 years, and it is appalling for any government to distribute the grant 3 months before the end of the year. Those grants should have been distributed from January of this year because budget was passed approving those grants since December 2018.
The opposition MP highlighted that the act is appalling and places added strain on the Tujaus.
Because they will be putting Tujaus under pressure within October to December to spend that money, including to account for it within 2 months, because by the time the villagers, the Tujaus go back to their village, it's going to be mid of October. By the time they settle in to start expending the grant, Christmas is on them, but they will be put under pressure to account for that money in such a short period of time.
The Presidential Grants Program is aimed at creating self-sufficiency within the hinterland villages and communities through green, innovative projects. Over 200 million was invested in 215 villages and communities under the program. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
In other news, 38-year-old Clive Wilson today appeared before Magistrate Fabio Azor at the Vigilantes Magistrates Court to answer to the charge of the gruesome murder of his wife. The laborer of Montrose, East Coast Demerara, was not required to plead to the charge, which alleged that on August 25, 2019, at Victoria Village on the east coast of Demerara, he viciously stabbed 27-year-old Shameen Frank, a mother of 3, to death. Globespan 24x7 News previously reported that the dead woman was at her home at Victoria Village when the suspect, who gained entry into the home by removing the panes from a window, stabbed her to her left breast. It was revealed that the woman's brother saw the suspect and asked him to remove from their yard sometime before the incident occurred. Later, he heard screaming and discovered her lying in a pool of blood. She was rushed to the Georgetown Public Hospital and was pronounced dead on arrival. The accused was remanded and is expected to make his next court appearance on November 26, 2019. Also, 45-year-old Selwyn Lancaster, who hails from Linden, was found guilty of raping a 6-year-old and also for touching her privates by a 12-member mixed jury. He told the court after hearing the verdict that, and I quote, "I really don't have nothing to say." The accused was indicted on both charges before Justice Simone Morris Ramlal on Wednesday afternoon at the Sexual Offences Court. In the first charge, it stated that the accused engaged in sexual penetration with a child under the age of 16 years on October 6, 2018 at Linden. The second charge stated that on October 6, 2018, at the same address, he also engaged in sexual activity with the child when he touched her privates. The jury, after deliberating for over 2 hours, found him guilty on both charges. The traumatized child, in her impact statement, said, open quote, "I feel sad because of what he did to me. I don't trust people. I want Selwyn to go to jail because of what he did to me," end quote. The man will return to court for his probation report, hearing and sentencing on October 28, 2019. The Georgetown Public Hospital Ophthalmology Department earlier today held a free screening and eye testing activity at the Matai Supermarket in observance of World Eyesight Day 2019. The activity saw a call being made to the general populace to get screened for silent eye diseases. Here is that report.
Each year on October 10, countries worldwide observe World Sight Day, an international day of awareness held annually on the second Thursday of October to focus attention on the global issue of eyesight health. This year, the theme is Vision First, a call to nations to ensure that everyone has access to affordable eye care. World Eyesight Day provides a platform for organizations to encourage governments, corporations, institutions, and individuals to actively support global blindness prevention efforts. The Georgetown Public Hospital Department of Ophthalmology has been spearheading World Sight Day activities in Guyana, with various activities being done over the years to promote vision health, education, and awareness. Today, the ophthalmology team branched off to Matai Supermarket, where over 200 Guyanese were given free access to eye screens and tests. Dr. Shalinder Sugrim spoke with Globespan 24x7 News and explained that the department has been vigorously campaigning for persons to take their eye health seriously.
Public awareness materials, we print about diseases of the eye, we do radio programs, we also print flyers, posters, we do, like we have here today, free eye screening, because a lot of the eye diseases, patients suffer with them and they're not aware of it.
Dr. Sugrim noted that most persons are not aware that they suffer from an eye disease unless they are screened, but sometimes it's too late.
For example, diabetic retinopathy, which is where the blood vessels of the eye become damaged, and also glaucoma. So patients can be moving around as per normal, doing regular duties, and they're not aware that these conditions exist. That's why it's important for us to spread awareness about these diseases and also do regular checks. We encourage you patients.
According to Dr. Sugrim, cataract is the most common eye disease seen by the department.
The common disease in Guyana is cataract. Following that, we have diabetic retinopathy, refraction errors. Those are spectacle issues. And we also have glaucoma. Yeah. Other minor problems we see from time to time include trauma, infections, stuff like that.
75% of blindness is avoidable. 3 out of 4 people have avoidable visual impairment. Remember to take an eye test soon. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Chief of Staff Brigadier Patrick West on Tuesday presented 21 ensigns of the Standard Officer Course, 51 with their certificates of completion and paratroopers wings, after they successfully completed their final jump at Air Station London. The ensigns of SOC 51 are the second cohort to have completed the paratrooper course during their formative training. In his congratulatory remarks, Brigadier West relayed that the history of the GDF and Colonel Ulrich Pilgrim Officer Cadet School was being written with indelible ink. As it relates to the inclusion of the course as a component of officer cadet training, Brigadier West emphasized that the model will continue to be used, as it will ultimately provide the GDF with an officers who are more operationally ready to face the challenges of the contemporary operating environment. Brigadier West noted that the inclusion of the paratrooper course is aimed at ensuring that junior leaders in the force attain the skills necessary to enable them to easily transition into any operational theater. Following the award of their certificates and the paratroopers' wings, the ensigns were congratulated by an assemblage of officers, which included the commanding officers of the Air Corps, the Training Corps, the 31 Special Forces Squadron, the 6th Infantry Battalion, and the Staff Officer General 3, among others. We'll now take a short commercial break. Do stay tuned for regional, international, and diaspora news at our New York studio.
To keep up with breaking news in Guyana, the rest of the Caribbean, and on the international scene, like, follow, and subscribe to Globespan 24x7's Facebook and YouTube news page. Join the conversation, get live news on the go, and news and details right here on Globespan 24x7 News.
Travelspan is a proud sponsor of Globespan 24x7 News. Travelspan has some cheap fares to Guyana on American Airlines flights. Fly from January for $234 one-way and $512 round-trip. Take advantage of these cheap fares on American non-stop flights from JFK to Guyana. That's non-stop flights from JFK to Guyana starting as low as $234 one-way and $512 round-trip. And also has the cheapest fares for Christmas that starts as low as $799 round-trip. Travelspan celebrating 25 years in business with over 10 offices to serve you. Call 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. Or book online at travelspan.com. Book early and save.
Thank you, Shakima. We'll tell you now that the IMF urges Guyana's government to make asset declarations. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has urged government during its latest Article 4 consultation in Guyana to make asset declarations to the Integrity Commission public. In a report, the IMF said since the establishment of the Commission, more than 50% of people required to declare assets in the 2018 to 2019 cycle has submitted application to do so. IMF noted the importance of developing a structure used by the Integrity Commission to verify asset declarations, stating that they will improve governance, support investor confidence, and promote growth overall. The Commission is currently working on readying an agenda for verification of declarations, which will be beneficial to the establishment of the Commission over time. The IMF report said government is reviewing regulations to allow more access to information developing management information systems and operationalizing the whistleblower policy. The Integrity Commission requires certain categories of public officials to declare their assets and liabilities by June 30 of each year. And we'll tell you that 69 persons found caged in Trinidad and Tobago are victims of false imprisonment, and this is according to the authorities. Family members of the persons found caged in a church in what police are calling the biggest modern-day slavery and human trafficking ring in Trinidad and Tobago have expressed disbelief after the shocking discovery was unearthed yesterday. A relative of one of the victims among the 69 people discovered said she was in disbelief. Lost for words, the relative said, no one had any idea that such a horrifying thing was happening in Trinidad, and most shocking to people who were mentally ill. But officials from the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has described the situation as that of false imprisonment and maltreatment, given the conditions that the victims were housed in, such as locked cages resembling prison cells. According to reports, some family members were aware of the situation and had been paid from $2,000 to $5,000 and more for their loved ones to be housed at the center. Of the 69 people rescued, 65 were men and 4 were women. Some were handcuffed. They were all between the ages of 19 and 70 years old. 6 people were detained at the church, including the pastor. And we'll tell you now that 11 persons were arrested for dragging Mexican mayor through the streets of Mexico. Some 11 people have been arrested in southern Mexico after the mayor of their village was dragged out of his office, tied to a pickup truck, and dragged through the streets. According to reports, police intervened to free Mayor Jorge Luis Escando Hernandez, who reportedly suffered no major injuries. It was the second attack by farmers demanding that he fulfill his campaign promise to repair a local road. Extra officers have been deployed to the village in Chiapas state. Mayors and local politicians in Mexico are often targeted by drug gangs when they refuse to cooperate with their criminal schemes, but it is less common for them to be attacked over their campaign promises. Escandon said he would press charges for abduction and attempted murder. And we'll tell you now that 36 Boeing 737 NGs found with cracked wings during an inspection. A mass inspection worldwide has found 36 Boeing 737 NGs with cracked wing, resulting in their grounding pending repairs. The cracks discovered when several planes were being converted from passenger to cargo use and represents another blow to Boeing, still reeling from the crashes of 2 of its latest versions of the venerable 737 MAX. The company in a statement said, Boeing regrets the impact this issue is having, and they are actively working to procure parts, develop repair and replace plans, and provide all the technical support needed to safely return every impacted airplane to service as soon as possible. The 737NG crack issue came as Boeing continues to try to revamp and test the control system in the 737 MAX, grounded after the crashes of Lion Air Jet a year ago and an Ethiopian Airlines flight in March. Boeing is counting on software changes in a system designed to work in the background, make the plane feel like previous versions. But the crashes occurred after pilots on both jets wrestled with the automated system, which kept pushing the plane's nose down as they tried to keep it aloft. A total of 346 died in the 2 crashes. And now Zelensky brushed aside talks of blackmail in phone call with Trump. With impeachment talks ongoing against US President Donald Trump, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has recently said there was no blackmail in a phone call with Trump. The Ukrainian president said this is not corruption. It was just a call. According to reports, the call prompted a whistleblower complaint and Democratic impeachment inquiry of the Republican president, who denies withholding U.S. aid while pressuring Ukraine to investigate political rival Joe Biden. Speaking to reporters at a news conference in Kyiv on Thursday, Zelensky said the purpose of the conversation was to arrange a meeting with Trump, and there were no conditions from the U.S. side. Mr. Zelensky also said he does not believe U.S.-Ukraine relations will be affected by the inquiry into the call. Further, Canada has joined major allies and condemned Turkey's intrusion in Syria. We'll tell you now that Canada has joined its major allies on Wednesday in firmly condemning Turkey's military incursion into northern Syria. Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland made the country's position clear, saying the unilateral action by Turkey risks rolling back the progress against Islamic State militants, also known as Daesh. Turkey's military action is targeting Kurdish forces and comes after U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly decided Sunday that American troops would stand aside. The Foreign Affairs Minister has since called for the protection of civilians and on all parties to respect their obligations under international law, including unhindered access for humanitarian aid. And we'll tell you now that a man climbed on top of a plane in climate protests in London City. The reports state that Paralympic medalist James Brown on Thursday climbed on top of a British Airways plane at London City Airport as part of ongoing protests by Extinction Rebellion. The man, who is visually impaired, filmed himself clinging to the fuselage as he streamed a live message online. Metropolitan Police Commissioner described the man's action as reckless and dangerous. According to reports, another man refused to sit in his seat, delaying a flight by nearly 2 hours on day 4 of change protests. Police arrested people blocking the airport entrance, as others glued themselves to the floor. Flights have largely run on time or with slight delays in and out of London City Airport. Meanwhile, in Westminster, tents and protesters have been cleared from the roads leading to Parliament Square. Protesters also caused disruption outside the terminal, as several sat down on the zebra crossing, blocking traffic going in and out of the passenger drop-off zone. Cars and buses were backed up in both directions before the demonstrators were cleared from the roads by police. And we'll tell you now that Sudan makes history with first woman being appointed the Chief Justice. Sudan made history with its decision. For the first time, a woman has been chosen as the Chief Justice in Sudan. The Sovereign Council, which is made up of civilian and military officials, confirmed that Supreme Court Judge Nimat Abdullah would head the country's judiciary. Although only 2 of the 11-member Sovereign Council in charge of Sudan are women, this latest appointment is seen as a significant step towards addressing gender inequality. Activists have been pushing for more female appointments, especially since many women played a key role in the protests that led to the downfall of former President Omar al-Bashir. Also, alleged ISIS member stabs Indonesia's security minister. Police in Indonesia said that the country's security minister has been stabbed by a man who is believed to be inspired by the Islamic State group. The minister, who goes by just Wiranto, was getting out of a car in a town square in Banten province when he was attacked. The former military chief and ex-presidential candidate, who is 72 years old, suffered 2 deep wounds to his stomach but is in a stable condition. A police officer and 2 other people were injured, while 2 suspects, a man and a woman, were also arrested. The minister was taken by helicopter to hospital in the capital, Jakarta, and remain in a stable condition up to press time. Meanwhile, in other news, stocks climb as investors focus on trade talks. We'll tell you the stocks are picking up a pace on the world market as investors keep a careful eye on the latest trade developments amid high-level meetings between American and Chinese stock officials and the pound surge on talk of a Brexit deal as the deadline for the UK to leave the EU quickly approaches. Banks and automakers led the S&P 500 index higher, though there were plenty of gyrations after an overnight sessions that saw future whipsawed by headlines, given conflicting signs of progress on the negotiations. The dollar fell, brushing off a weak inflation reading as the focus remained on trade. 10-year Treasury yields rose past 1.65% as bonds rallied globally. But markets are still shaky against a backdrop of deteriorating economic data and fresh tensions between the US and China in recent days, as they prepare for the first face-to-face talks between senior officials since July. Thursday, a series of headlines roiled markets, with traders attempting to digest reports on everything from the duration of the talks to the potential currency pact. And that has brought us to the end of today's news in the region and around the world. Let's join Mr. Kumar Doshi at our studio in India for more news to come.
Thank you. Namaste, salam and good day to everyone. This is TechBeat on Globespan 24x7. Yesterday, we discussed a few emerging technologies in agriculture, like sensors that can give real-time monitoring of air and soil to farmers, satellite imaging that can help farmers know the condition of the crops via satellite. But these were just brief explanations. Today, we will discuss in-depth information about one of those emerging technologies, that is vertical farming. With a global population set to exceed 10 billion by 2050, providing good, sustainable and cheap food for all of them will be a challenge. There will be a lack of agricultural land since we will need to provide land for the future generations to live. Vertical farming could be the future of food production. Vertical farming is the practice of growing produce in vertically stacked layers. This method helps mountainside towns, deserts and cities grow different types of fruits and vegetables by using factory-like sites and skyscrapers. Most vertical farms use enclosed structures similar to greenhouse that stack vertically either directly above each other or staggered for better natural light exposure. In vertical farming, the ambient light, soil conditions, nutrients, and water supply can be carefully controlled. Since vertical farming uses stacked layers to grow crops, they use up less space than traditional farming. This gives the advantage of being close to urban areas, which reduce transportation costs and also cutting on greenhouse gas emission. Crops that are grown by conventional methods have a risk against climate change that brings unseasonal rains, droughts, etc. But not in vertical farming. Since crops can be grown in an enclosed environment, the use of harmful pesticides and risk against insects that destroy the crop is also eliminated. Vertical farming uses less water. It also is much hygienic than conventional farming, resulting in high quality yield. However, vertical farmings do have their limitations, like the level of energy that they need to operate. But there is a workaround to that problem by using renewable energy like solar, wind, and using different energy and efficient LED lights, and also rainwater harvesting. But as of now, compared to traditional farming, vertical farms are a bit expensive since the technology hasn't matured to bring the cost down. Experts say eventually vertical farming will be the common practice and will be cheaper to operate in coming future. How vertical farming will help not just developed but also developing nations. Vertical farming is said to have increased food production and also its quality. Hence countries could increase their exports and bring in a lot of revenue. Vertical farming could also create new jobs in export business, research and development of vertical farms, construction and maintaining vertical farms, etc. Hence boosting the economy. That wraps up for today's Tech Beat, but we will be back with more technologies in agriculture. I'm Kumar Doshi bringing tech news to you from India. Back to our studio in Guyana for more news to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Kumar. We'll now take a look at our bridge reports. now for a look at what's happening in the world of sport with Abel Harris.
Thanks, Shakima. Now here to take a look at sports. Ahead of two very important encounters in 4 days in the CONCACAF Nations League, head coach of the Golden Jaguars, Marcino Maximo, has released the names of players making up his 22-man squad. His team takes on Antigua and Barbuda on Friday, October 11th at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium and on Monday, October 14th here at the Lenora National Track and Field Center. The Golden Jaguars will be aiming for back-to-back wins in their quest to further consolidate their current second place in Group C of League B, where they are on 3 points, the same as their opponent, but with a superior goal difference of 3 to Antigua and Barbuda's 5. The local-based players have been going through their places with head of sports science Wilson Toledo and head coach Maximo ever since Guyana's 0-4 loss to Jamaica in order to be fit and ready to claim full points in both matches. The players and staff, who would be sporting the new official uniform, apparel, and equipment from the recently signed deal with Capelli Sport, arrived in the land of the Benin Boys on Tuesday. The team names and squads for the two women's T10 matches that the Hero CPL will be hosting on October 10 and 12, 2019 at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy in Trinidad have been announced. The teams will be called NLCB Revelers and the Courts Gladiators. The Revelers will be made up from cricketers from Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Leeward Islands. The Gladiators will feature cricketers from Barbados, Guyana, and Windward Islands. The NLCB Revelers will be captained by Stephanie Taylor, and the Courts Gladiators will be led by Afi Fletcher. The two teams will feature the best cricketing talent from across the Caribbean, with the likes of Anisa Mohammed, Brittany Cooper, Natasha McLean, Casey Knight, Haley Matthews, and Kiana Joseph taking part. These games have been made possible thanks to the support of the Trinidad and Tobago's Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, courts, and the National Lottery Control Board and Hero CPL. These matches will take place before the semi-final and final of this year's Hero CPL, and ticket holders for those matches will be able to attend at no extra cost. Meanwhile, all ticket holders who will be attending the Hero CPL semi-final and final at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy on 10 and 12 October are advised that the following items are prohibited from the stadium. No coolers, large rucksacks or bags permitted. Small coolers needed for medicines are allowed but subject to a check. No chairs or seats of any kind will be permitted on the mound. No firearms or other weapons will be permitted, nor will storage for some be provided. Tennis star Naomi Osaka has decided to take sole Japanese nationality over U.S. citizenship with a view to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, according to Japanese public broadcaster NHK. Two-time Grand Slam champion Osaka, who was born in Japan to a Japanese mother and Haitian father, but was brought up in the U.S., told NHK that it gives her a special feeling to try to go to the Olympics to represent Japan. According to Japanese law, those with dual nationality must choose one before turning 22 years old. Osaka's 22nd birthday is on October 16. Osaka, who resides in the U.S., defeated world number 1 Ash Barty in the final of the China Open in Beijing last Sunday. Her victory, coming after the last month's title success at the Pan Pacific Open in Japan, lifted her back to number 3 in the world. That's all for sports. Thank you, Samuel.
Thanks, Abel. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. Before we go, here's a recap of our major headlines. Opposition leader apologizes for explicit use in leaked private conversation. 19-year-old man wanted for murder of Golden Grove man. Government possibly eyeing return to Parliament to pass budget, says opposition chief whip. East Coast Demerara labor remanded for stabbing wife to death. And Georgetown Hospital urges all Guyanese to screen for silent eye diseases. Thanks for watching Globespan 24x7 News. On behalf of myself, Samuel Signalan, the news and technical team in Ghana, New York, and India. Until next time, do have a pleasant rest of the evening. Goodbye for now.